Welcome to the Conscious Community Podcast, brought to you by Conscious Community Magazine. I'm your host, Janae.
And I'm Spencer.
Today, we're speaking with Sam Bennett of the Organized Artist Company about her latest book, Start Right Where You Are. Welcome, Sam, to the Conscious Community Podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
We wanted to just start. You can tell us a little bit about what brought you to write these books. So you have this book and a book previous to this, Get It Done. What in your life inspired you to get into this field?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the books mostly came out of, they're the books that I kept buying other books. They're the books that I kept trying to read. Like I kept buying other books, trying to find these books and what I noticed is there's a lot of books out there about how to get organized, about how to set goals and how to manage your time and how to be more productive. And those books are terrific. But, creative people don't really care who's moved their cheese. That's not really how we roll. And then there's a lot of great creativity books out there, but most of them are focused on spiritual healing through creativity or, unleashing your inner artist. And for those of us who are already plenty unleashed, thanks very much, I really wanted something that spoke to us about how do we move forward. When you're a creative person, you've got a million different ideas, you're pulled in a lot of different directions, you're not always super motivated by money. You have a lot of self-doubt and perfectionism. It can get a little complicated. So I really wanted to talk to my brothers and sisters in the creative world and say, your work matters and you can do this.
I really identify personally, actually, with who you're writing to in this book. I'm an artist in every way, and I'm totally not motivated by money. I will work for endless hours for nothing on things that I really believe in, but can't stand to do menial things for 20 minutes for money. Why do you think artists are so inclined to be overachievers, perfectionists, and procrastinators? Where do you think that comes from?
Well, I think it comes from a lot of different places. Partly, I think it comes from having a lot of different talents and skills. Most of I've never met a single disciplinary artist, right? I've never met a single creative person who was like, oh, I'm a writer, and that's all I do. Every creative person I know is like, well, I'm a writer, but I also, I dabble around in a lot of French cooking. I do a lot of needlework. I used to make stained glass windows, but not so much anymore. Oh, I've been clone dancing on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. I'm totally like that.
We're interested in a lot of things. We have a lot of talents and skills. And frankly, we're used to being able to pick things up kind of quickly, right? We're used to being quite adept at things, which often means that, we don't develop much in the way of patience. We're tenacious as hell, but but if we can't get something right away, we're like, I'm bored, I gotta go. And that's a little incomprehensible, I think, to other people who maybe don't have as many talents and skills. It seems a little like, it feels like we're unfocused or like we should just pick one thing. But when you're good at a lot of things, then you expect yourself to be good at a lot of things. So I think that leads to some of the high standards. We also, we get big ideas. We get big ideas all the time. We've got 6 big ideas before breakfast. And, it's a big idea with like a sequel and a theme park and a grassroots movement and t-shirts. Like it's a whole thing. And then we sort of immediately get overwhelmed because how do you even move forward on an idea that's that big? So that cycle kicks in a lot of, gosh, I can imagine it so beautifully in my mind and I can't. And I'm either concerned that I'm not really up to the task or I don't even know how to start.
Absolutely. I'm totally like that. I can see a project in its completion very clearly, but getting those small steps to get there is really the hard part for me. And that's what you're talking about in your book, is you're giving people little examples of these small steps to work towards whatever their goal is.
I'm actually kind of the opposite. I mean, maybe I'm just better. Maybe I taught myself to do this at some point. I think I used to have a lot of that perfectionism, but at a certain point, I kind of very much focused on the step-by-step part. And just in working with Janae, that's something I've been on her about, is that you kind of think of it at like 98%, like 100% is perfect, and like nothing ever gets to 100%. It's literally not possible. So like it's not that I don't care about quality, although somebody who's a perfectionist will characterize not wanting it to be 100% as it's crap. But it's not that I don't care about quality. It's that I want it to be good enough, and then I want it to be done and move on to the next part of the process or the next project or whatever it is. And I talk a lot about like pulling the trigger, like, it will never be perfect, and you're not getting it out there. Nobody's reading it, until you pull the trigger on it. And at some point you just have to say, okay, this drawing is as far as I can take it. If I spend any more time, I'm going to ruin it. And if I don't move on to something else, like this is never going to see the light of day. So you just have to pull the trigger and move on.
Well, that's exactly right. And you've touched on a lot of important things there. Some of it is, frankly, just the spiritual maturity that it takes to be able to say, the work is more important than my big fat opinion about the work. Mm-hmm. And it's more important to me that I get my work out there where it can touch people and heal people and make people smile or cry or do whatever it does, than it is for me to satisfy some weird little button inside of myself that says perfection matters. I did myself a big favor when I sort of redefined perfection inside of my mind. I don't think of perfection as being without flaws. I think of perfection like an egg is perfect, or like a baby is perfect, or like a leaf is perfect. It may have discolorations, it may be a funny shape, but it's perfect unto itself. Mm-hmm. It is the thing that it is fully expressed as itself, and it is fully lovable as itself. And when I did that, that helped a lot. And I had a conversation actually with a friend of mine that there was some work I had done and she was like, she's one of those really good, tough friends. And she's like, Sam, I love you, but this work is it's not really up to your standard. I don't love it the way I love a lot of your other stuff. And I was like, you know what, Carol? I love my other stuff either. But first of all, it's done. And other people seem to really love it. So it's speaking to other people in a way that maybe some of my more quote unquote perfect work isn't. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to, again, lift my big fat judgment about what I think it's for, how good I think it is, because honestly, who cares? You are a terrible judge of your own work. You are a terrible judge of how ready you are. You're a terrible judge of your own capacity. You're a terrible judge. Stop it, because you're awful at it. Let other people have that job. And I guarantee you, if you're a creative person, the thing that's really going to catapult you to stardom is not going to be your favorite piece. Yes. And I know so many famous people, rich people, successful people who are years of breaking labor, and they love the thing with the dog. Really?
Yeah, that's totally
really?
A thing. Right?
With music. They love this.
It'd be the one song you didn't like, but it ends up being your big hit, but you have to just accept it for what it is, and that it
then you
serves
have to
the public.
perform it at every venue for the rest of your life.
That's right.
That's the other thing about, as you touched on something about the message that I think a lot of people who create, especially musicians or anything that's got some kind of message to it, is that they feel like this purpose in life that I don't know. I've talked to people who the universe is giving them this gift. It's kind of flowing through them. It's not even really coming from them. They have this message. Mm-hmm. And then when they get so obsessed with that perfection, really, I see it a lot in technical perfection, as far as with musicians and the sound engineering that goes into their work, is that, the message that the heavens sent down to them is the really important part, and they get obsessed with polishing it and polishing it and polishing it and polishing it, and to the point where that message never gets transmitted to the people who are supposed to hear it. And it's I feel like you're, if you were given that message as part of your purpose in this planet, you're failing to convey it because you're getting hung up on the quality of the audio samples in your keyboard that you used, instead of the actual message itself.
Well, that's right. And it's a form of hiding. It's a very socially acceptable form of hiding. And what I really, because your listeners are not, spiritual beginners. I wouldn't say this to just anybody, but you got to kind of look at the moral high ground involved. There's a little bit of martyrdom around that, well, it's just me and my damned perfectionism. I just can't extended, if it's not perfect, like it makes you sound so freaking special. It's like, drop it. You're not that great. You know, you don't, like you say, you don't have the ability to make it 100% perfect. No one does. And be subservient to the message, be subservient to the people that you're trying to serve. And here's something I talk about actually a lot in my first book, in Get It Done. Get a C. Get a C. Quit trying to get an A+ in everything. Just get a C. C is the grade that you get for showing up and doing the work. Show up, do the work. Show up, do the work. Show up, do the work. Not doing the work better than everybody else, not doing a bunch of extra credit things, just showing up and doing the work. And here's why this works, because I can hear these perfectionists like breaking out in hives. But it works for a couple of reasons. You've probably already noticed that your version of a C is pretty much everybody else's version of an A. Right? You've put stuff out that you're like, oh, I'm not that crazy about this. And then people go nuts for it, right? But also, if you get it out there and it does need to be made more perfect, then you will make it more perfect, because that's how you roll, right? So, you know, I did that. My first self-published book took every bit of courage I had to push the button on go. Figured out that like the table of contents was totally wrong, and there was like a couple of really embarrassing typos. I was so mortified. And then I went back and I fixed it, you know, and I republished and I sent a new cut. You know, here it is, director's cut 2.0, you know, sent it to the people who, you know, the 5 people who bought it. It's like you have time to revise. You can do that, but you can't fix it if it's never done to begin with.
That's a good advice. And I really think in the age of the internet, we should be looking more at our work that way. Like, for example, you write something, you put it out as a blog, you can always go back and fix that, you know, misspelling or whatever.
If you put a MP3 of your music out and, you know, you catch an error and 100 people have listened to it, you can fix the error and replace the link, and the next 1,000 people who download it didn't even hear it. And like, yeah, there's a minor flaw that some people may have noticed, but it's really like, as a creator, you notice your own mistakes way more than other people do. Like most, especially if they're amateurs, if they're not artists themselves. And, you know, when you're a creator and you're surrounded, you know, if you're a musician, you're surrounded by musicians, you're going to hear those mistakes. They're going to hear those mistakes. You're going to think they're these glaring errors, but the general audience is totally oblivious. They wouldn't even know if you were playing in key. And, another thing I wanted to touch on is, criticism, especially in this day and age of the internet, negative criticism, trolling, hostile, horrible things. There is no escaping that. Like, if you're creating anything, people are going to say nasty things to you just to be mean for their own entertainment. So there's no, like, it's one thing if, you know, you receive some kind of constructive criticism, and you should be able to take that into your creative process and just, you know, take it as advice. But if somebody just, you know, if you put out a song or if you put out a piece of work and somebody just comes along and says horrible, mean things to you, you can't internalize that. Like, they're going to do that regardless. You cannot escape that. So the idea of creating something so perfect that nobody could possibly say anything negative to you is impossible.
Well, again, right, that's a child's thinking, right? If I'm perfect enough, then I'm safe.
Yeah.
And we know that that's not true. We also know that, you know, if you think about your favorite pieces, you know, the music or the books or the movies or the TV shows that have meant the most to you, that have saved you when you're crying on the living room carpet at 3 a.m, you know, and there's something that saved you. It didn't save you because it was perfect. You don't love it because it's perfect. You love it because it means something to you, because it spoke to you, because it explained your feelings to you in a way that you could understand, because it gave you comfort in some way. And that's really what we're about. I've got this thing I do too. This thing about criticism I think is really interesting, because, you know, my background's in theater, right? So I'm an actor, I'm an improviser. I did a lot of theater and a lot of film and television. And, you know, when people are criticizing your acting, they're talking about you. It's not even your music. It's you. It's your body. It's your voice. It's your interpretation. It's you. And we want to be loved and we want to be approved of. And so what I started to do was take elements of criticism and just add the word sometimes to it. So I thought, I thought that performance was totally fake. Like, okay, totally fake. And I just breathe that in. Totally fake. Can I find where that's ever been true? Have I ever done anything that was totally fake? Probably. Sure. Yeah, certainly at least mostly fake. Absolutely. I have totally faked it. Yes. Was I faking it in that moment? I didn't think so, but okay. Totally fake. Can I find that? And then so I'm totally fake sometimes. I'm totally fake sometimes. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I am. Sometimes I'm 100% genuine and authentic and sincere. And that sometimes, it's the end of war, right? Like Byron Katie says, it's the end of war. Because you're saying what they're saying is true. Oh, you're horrible. You suck. You say, I'm horrible and I suck. Sometimes. Oh yeah. I'm totally horrible and I suck sometimes. Yeah, that's absolutely happened. Okay. I wasn't trying to suck in that exact moment, but sure. And it's amazing. I was talking to a client who was with her husband, and he said, in a fit, he goes, gosh, he goes, you are just so sensitive. And she goes, sometimes. I'm like, boom, end of argument.
Yeah, absolutes are seldom helpful. Thinking about arguing with someone, it's a safe bet you're being unfair anytime you say you always something or you never something. Like, you never listen to me. That's not true. It's never
right.
true that your partner or your coworker or whatever never somethings or always something. That's sometimes
right,
is
but
much
I never
more
listen
likely to be true.
Right, but I never listen to you sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true. Sometimes I never listen to you.
We could think of this as, creative people working through these issues, but also with your book and just in general, I feel that all people are creative. I think that's one of the attributes of being a human being. And I think a lot of people who might not label themselves as creatives have these same blocks in their own way, in their own fields. For example, you could be coming up with a new system you're a nurse and it's a new system for some sort of, how they do something. I don't exactly know. I'm not a nurse, but you come up with this new idea, but you're afraid to get it out there. You're just afraid to do it because you're afraid of how people will judge you. So I feel like these ideas can relate to more than just so-called artists.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think that everyone is creative. Not everyone is artistic, right? In the same way that not everyone is musical. But if you have ever solved a problem differently than anybody else has ever solved the problem, congratulations, you are a creative genius. And it can be hard to discern our own creative genius because you're so good at it, right? It's the stuff you do naturally, the stuff you do easily, the stuff that comes to you, the stuff that, whatever it is that when you're in front of it, you just go, oh, well, I guess this would go here, or I would do this, or let's solve this way, and whether that's putting together a party or putting together a meal or knowing how to talk to children or knowing what to say to someone when they're upset, there are things you have a natural aptitude for. And when you lean into those things, when you lean into those talents and skills in life. So, yes, to remember that there's not, and it may or may not be the thing you got a degree in. It may or may not be the thing that got approved of in your family. But you have a lot that is very special to you that the world is waiting for.
You were talking about showing up and getting a C. If you're a perfectionist and you're obsessed with getting that A+, and it's due at, your project or whatever is due at 2:00, or the exam is at 2:00, and you're so obsessed with getting an A+ that you stay at home and you keep studying until 4:00, you get a 0. If you don't even show up and do the exam or turn in the paper, you don't get any credit. And I think that's where a lot of creative types that I know live, is that they don't even turn it in, that they don't get the C, they don't get the A+, they get a 0 because they didn't even pull the trigger and get it out there. Almost every creative type I've ever met who's not successful has that same problem, and they all regard their perfectionism as their strength. And I really see perfectionism as the characteristic that keeps creative people from succeeding.
I would disagree. As a perfectionist and a creative person, I never in my life thought that was my strength.
What, being a perfectionist?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've always thought that was
you
the
may
worst
not,
thing about me.
but I know a lot of people who they think that the reason why they're good is because they create some stuff that's perfect. You've recognized, yourself analytical enough to recognize that it's a problem, but you look at the creative field of successful musicians and actresses and whatever, a lot of them are pretty mediocre.
Well, that's why it's so frustrating for the perfectionists, because the people who get it out there just aren't as good.
Yeah,
and then you feel like no one values you.
The difference between the actress who got the part and the actress who didn't, who's a better actress, is that the actress who got the part probably showed up for the audition, and the other one was crippled with self-doubt and going over her lines a million times and then decided not to show up.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking to me, the number of creative projects that never see the light of day. Because of that insecurity, because of that perfectionism. And, I think school plays a little bit of a trick on us. In general, in school, you succeed by knowing the answers in advance, right? Often you know the questions in advance. That's how you do well. But life isn't like that. The creative process isn't like that. Love isn't like that. Being a parent isn't like that. You need to surrender to the process a little bit. And you also need, we're tribal animals, right? That's who we are as beings. We're tribal animals. So we're very concerned about the good opinion of the group. People say like, oh, I'm a people pleaser. Oh, I get so, worried. Well, that's not low self-esteem. That's survival. We know that if we're too weird or we're too selfish or we're too whatever, we're going to get kicked out and we cannot survive alone. We need the group. So of course we're concerned about the good opinion of the group. Of course we want to be seen as contributing and helpful and not too strange. It's all very normal. So what I recommend is to really leverage the power of the group. Get a coach, get a buddy. I have a friend who's a coach who she'd say, okay, I'd like you to write out a check for $1,000 made out to some social or political cause with whom you violently disagree, and give it to me. And if you do not publish this song by this date, I will mail that check in.
Give yourself
a little social accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, give yourself an ultimatum. Give yourself, some responsibility to other people, because you're exactly right. There is a form of narcissism that is born of anxiety. When you are so anxious and so self-conscious, you can't even see other people. You can't hear what they're saying. You can't participate with them. And again, when you sink into, people who don't create a lot, I think, misunderstand, artists, they're just ego freaks. They love the spotlight. They love the applause. In my experience, that is not true.
I agree.
I'm super shy.
That artists do not want to be in the spotlight. The people who want to be in the spotlight are not the artists. They're something else. I was just talking with him about this yesterday. Yeah,
some artists love the spotlight, but some dentists love the spotlight too. It's like that's not a job thing. That's a personality thing. So to remember, it isn't about you. And again, you have this dream to do this work. You have this idea. No one else has this idea, not the same way you do. It's all been said before, but not by you. And that little idea, the fact that it is still on your heart, the fact that it is still tugging on your sleeve, that's it. That is your engraved invitation from God. That's all any of us get. I think sometimes we look at people who have done things we want to do or we perceive as being more successful, and we think, well, it must have been easier for them. Sure, Janae and Spencer can have a podcast. It must be easy for them. Sam can write 2 books. It must be easy for her. And I think we can all guarantee, it's not. I can guarantee you 100%. It is not easier for me. But I did manage to get out of the way of the book.
In some ways, it's probably actually harder, because if you're actually doing something, you don't have the luxury of saying, just giving up. So
my musician friend, he one thing that I noticed about him that is that he's got a lot of, I would say, insecure ego tied up in the fact that what he produces is the best.
There's never been a better time to be a maker of things. You can reach your audience. You can create. There's almost no cost to creating, right? We want to produce an album, we can produce an album. We want to do a TV show, hold up your iPhone, let's make a TV show. We want to, I want to do a stand-up routine, let's do it. Turn on YouTube, let's make it happen. So there's no barrier to entry, and you can reach the people who are already into what you're doing really easily. You want to find those Slovakian clog dancers, they are there, and you can find them. We have an opportunity now to make money from our creativity in a way that's easier than ever before. And when you are making money from your creativity, right, your creativity is an endless and endlessly renewable resource. You're never going to run out of ideas. You're never going to run out of opportunities to express. That's never going to happen. And so your unlimited creativity is meeting the unlimited world, right? You're never going to run out of people to perform for. You're never going to run out of people who want to read your book or, need your help in whatever way. When endlessly renewable resource meets an endlessly renewable resource, there is no competition. Right? We're not making money by exploiting, slave labor. We're not making money by exploiting the resources of the planet. We're making money by exploiting our own creativity, which is endless and endlessly renewable. And so all of a sudden, there's plenty.
Well,
there's plenty for you. There's plenty for me. I don't need to be in competition with anybody else.
That's one of the reasons why I have such a long-standing animosity towards the traditional entertainments and arts industry, is that when these things were set up back in the 19th century, this was during the Industrial Revolution, and the factory model was the model that was implemented. So you had the idea of a centralized location where a product would be produced and then sold to consumers. And the music and the film industry in particular were set up that way. That's why Hollywood was built as a centralized place. That's why, even though you could have a movie camera anyway, for some reason that was the movie factory. And that as we're going through this process of decentralization and democratization of the tools to produce movies, there's an amount of craft and a quality control that needs to go in if you want to produce a professionally produced film. But if you wanted to do it, the actual equipment and skills necessary to produce a Hollywood quality feature film are within reach of the average person now. And that the movie factory hates that. And there's a concerted effort of the centralized entertainment industry to attack self-produced content as being unprofessional or imperfect, because it's a competition to them. And the way that they made the money they made out of it is by making it what is an unlimited resource a limited resource. It's a false scarcity. There is no limit to how much music can be created and how much people will listen to it, but they've created a controlled and limited system in order to artificially escalate the cost associated with it. So, instead of being able to reach your audience that likes your particular message, your particular, Slovakian clog dancing, they very narrowly define the type of dancing that's acceptable dancing that's worth paying money for, and the only dance shows that you've seen are this very narrowly controlled, genre that is, completely within a system of theaters and whatnot that can be controlled and a scarcity enforced so that prices can be maintained at a high level, and that they can maintain a monopoly control over that medium.
I'm starting my own arts and music school. I've been working on that for the last 2 years, and I just posted to our page this quote yesterday that the currency of the 21st century is creativity. That was said by I don't
It was
remember.
like some economic development guy from like
From
Fairfax.
Fairfax, Virginia,
Yeah.
yeah, and he said that creativity was the new currency, and I think that that's what we're talking about here is kind of like mining our minds versus mining for gold. We're looking for that gold within us and letting it out to how it can truly benefit the world in a way that doesn't harm, like you were saying, is sustainable and can really make the world a better place.
Yeah, and I think the previous model was really oriented around uh, isolating and controlling the artist and the creative type and mining him in a way that wasn't the genuinely the most of the cases the person who was doing the actual creating didn't get a lot of the benefit. You know, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of writers who slave away in Hollywood for every, major studio executive who makes millions, living on the edge of poverty.
It's true. No, you're exactly right. And I hear it all the time. You hear it about the music industry, you hear it about the publishing industry, you hear it about the film and television industry, and you're like, oh, publishing is dead. And I'm like, publishing deserved to die. It was a terrible business model that I don't know that it ever really worked all that well for anybody since Dickens, maybe. And, like now there's a million, a book doesn't even have to be a book anymore. It can be images, it can be interactive, it can have audio, it can be anything. And to watch creatives faced with this, incredibly beautiful world of opportunity, and boy, no one will put themselves in the box faster than the creative, right? That's like, well, I can't do that. Well, I don't know anything about that. Well, that's not going to work. Well, nobody wants that. That's not approved of. I don't have a degree in that. I don't know enough about that. Like, guys, try it.
Yeah,
Try it.
You don't
share the story that's on your heart.
You don't need a license to be a creative person, and you don't. I strongly encourage creative people to work for themselves. That I see a lot of people, creative people, even the ones who are putting it out there, they're putting it out there with the idea that someone like someone's going to give me a contract. Somebody's going to give me, they're going to hear it and they're going to think it's so good that they're going to swoop in and they're going to give me $1 million and then I'll be set. And it's not like the new media is much more the creative creates and the audience directly supports them. Like your relationship is directly with your audience. Nobody else is coming to save you. Nobody else is going to hear your gene. I mean, it's possible that old system still exists, but like really like if the old, factory system is going to persist at all, it's going to find some way to fit into this new paradigm. Whenever I've had a few brushes over the years with the old industry and tentative probing about what I would want it to do to work with them, and frankly, it's like your ship is sinking, and until I see that you guys understand that your ship is sinking and make efforts to right it, I don't want to get onto a ship that's sinking. I don't want to invest my time and energy into a model of doing things that's going to go away.
I think this goes beyond the creative things. I mean, our last podcast guest we just spoke with was Rami Shapiro, just wrote a book, the Holy Rascals, and he's writing about kind of like the end of branded religion, which is another like where the coming to this whole thing where every aspect, and we're going to be talking to conscious business people soon. Like everything is kind of coming to an end because we're moving into a new way of being with the technology, with the access to the world, and I think it's just changing everything about our lives.
Yeah.
And speaking about the access to our world, in your book, you actually talk about getting our phones out of our bedroom. And I kind of see that we have to come up with this new system now that everything's changing, but we have to come up with a new way to interact with this world that is the most productive one for us.
Yeah, 100%. If I could leave your people with one thought, I swear this is it. Get the cell phone out of the bedroom. Get your cell phone out of the bedroom. And your people are like, oh, I've got teenagers. Oh, I'm on call. Fine. Leave it on the bureau. Leave it by the door. Just get it off the nightstand. Nothing happening on your phone that cannot wait for you to give yourself back the gift of waking up in the morning. Give yourself back those moments of like those sort of liminal moments of stretching and coming to consciousness, and those little bits of your dream that are still sort of bonging around your head. And, I get a lot of, for the sensitive person, for the overworked person, for the creative person, that time is so important. Stretch and cuddle and roll over and like have that moment. I hear from people all the time, I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so overwhelmed. It's like, well, knock it off. Quit overwhelming yourself. That's something you do to you.
It's totally true. Yeah.
Overwhelm is not something that other people do to you. That is something you do to you. So get yourself, it can wait 20 minutes. While you do your prayer and meditation practice, while you stretch, while you take a shower, make a cup of tea, like really.
I think that's what...
Give yourself back a normal pace in the morning.
A big part of your book is that you're basically giving people, like, saying you need to take control of your own life. Like we're saying about the creative people waiting for someone to give them permission. People are waiting for something else to, I guess, sound off the shot and say you're off to the races, but really you just have to be off to the races.
Yeah, I think some of that comes with our education system and this idea that you do something and then you get graded on that. I've seen a lot of people who they come through school and they have a very hard time when they get out of college doing their profession, because once you're working, even if you're working for someone else, nobody they basically only notice when you mess up, and nobody comes in and once a week and says, okay, well this week you get a B, well this week you get a C, like and you're not being graded anymore, and you really just have to just start doing. And as a creative person, like you just have to start doing it. Nobody's going to come and tell you you're doing a good job. You may get, if you're posting songs on SoundCloud or if you're posting videos on YouTube, you may get feedback, but like nobody's going to tell you you're on the right track. Nobody's going to tell you you're doing it right. Like you just do it and people will find you. And when I look at some of the stuff on the internet that has huge followings that is just utter garbage, like really, if you're halfway decent, you're fine. Like it's okay if your picking technique for your acoustic guitar isn't perfect, because like there's what was the one I saw the other day? There's a YouTube channel where they buy toys and there's no commentary, there's no review, there's no analysis, there's no anything. They take the toy and they take it out of the box and they play with it. And that's it. And they have millions of subscribers and they're millionaires. Like, and it's this couple and the wife plays with a certain like kind of toys and the husband plays with a different kind of toys. And that's their entire career. So when I see people who are like highly sophisticated musicians and artists, like tearing their hair out and trying to be perfect and trying to be good enough and agonizing over whether or not it's ready to show to their adoring public, like you were ready a long time ago. Like there's people making millions of dollars off playing with toys. Like just pull the trigger.
That's right. And I think this question of, how many of the decisions I'm making right now are being dictated by my need to be loved and approved of. Mm-hmm. And that's, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be loved and approved of. We all want to be loved and approved of. But you can't let it drive the car, right? And so to start taking the little tiny steps, like I think too, sometimes people think like, if I was going to really be leading a creatively fulfilling life, I'd need to, move to Provence for 6 months, or I'd need to quit my job, or I'd need to, not have kids, or I'd need to, and none of that's true. You don't need to be so precious about your creativity. Find ways in every little moment. How can I make this moment more me? How can I make this moment more me? How can I make this email more me? How can I make this dinner more me? How can I make this outfit more me? How can I lean in and show up just 1% more authentically in the world? How could I
Yeah.
Make eye contact and be present with the people in the world just a little bit more. And see where that takes you.
I think that's really the essence of life, really, is we're all just trying to be ourselves. This astrologer, actually, Kipacha, I saw him on YouTube talking about people that were all a certain color, and that, like, you might be yellow, you might be green, you might be blue, and we're all just trying to be that certain color the best way we can be and truly come into that color. And I really think that's like a good explanation for what we're really trying to do in life, especially as creative people. We're really just trying to be ourselves. And when we get that down, will feel fulfilled.
Yeah, that's something that I see in, I've know a lot of musicians, so that's kind of the class of creative person I've interacted with the most. And I see a lot of that where the moment where they become most rewarded and most successful is typically when they stop looking for someone external to tell them that they have their voice right. They really have to find their voice. And it's usually kind of a return, like they go through this process of learning, developing, and learning technique and taking lessons, and they, at the point where they then take everything that they've learned and return to what they wanted to do to begin with, that got them into it in the first place. That's kind of the moment where it all just comes together and gels. And just to use the example, this other friend of mine, he has this feedback circle of sound engineers and whatnot who are all very advanced and successful, and he goes to them with when he gets done with a project, he goes to his feedback circle, he sends it to them. Most of them ignore it because these days everybody's so wrapped up in their own stuff, they don't even read their emails. And then he'll get a couple bits of criticism back. And I'm sure they're just trying to be helpful and give constructive criticism, but he's still like opening up himself to their opinion about what he should be doing with himself. And as soon as he gets that piece of criticism, he decides that the whole thing has to be scrapped, and it just sinks him every time, and it's just a little like, oh yeah, the snare needs to be a little louder, will be the comment, and then he just shuts it down. Like, that's it. Like, it's not what he thought it was perfect. Boom, that's it. It's over. Stick a fork in him. He's done. And like the moment, like I look at him and I think the moment when he becomes successful will be when he stops sending it to those people, because he already knows what he needs to know. He's already learned what he can learn from those people. He needs to just put it out and just do what he wants to do, and stop looking for approval from some gatekeeper who's going to tell him if it's good enough.
Well, and I think a lot of us do that, right? I mean, I think that's another really valuable point of inquiry and questioning, to say, where do I have a perfect system to make sure I never get what I want?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Where do I have, because we've all done it, right? My sister and I, pardon me, my sister and I have a running joke that we should have a sign up over the phone that says, "Don't call mother for comfort." Because my mother is a wonderful person. She's a brilliant person. She's a woman of many gifts. She is not, and has never been, one of those, oh, wooga wooga, sweet baby, tell me everything, you're my perfect princess. Like, she's not that person. So don't go to the empty cookie jar. Mm-hmm. Do not go to my mother looking for her to, cuddle you on her lap, because that's not what you're going to get from her. So, again, coming to a point of spiritual maturity to say, I'm going to stop criticizing her for not being the person that she's never been to begin with. Mm-hmm. I'm going to appreciate her for the things she does bring to my life, for the ways in which she does love and support me. And I'm going to find other people who will scoop me up and call me their pretty princess, if I want that. So to really look for yourself and say, where have I created a system where I am 100% guaranteed to not get what I want, and yet I keep playing this game like I'm going to get a different response.
Absolutely. I feel like we're very comfortable with the devil we know sort of thing. Like, we don't actually, in some ways, we prevent ourselves from being happy and accepting things for what they are, as they are. The only perfection there is the present moment. So
that's right.
Yeah, and if you're trying to financially succeed as a creative, if you don't produce something that can lead to income, then you will never be financially successful doing that.
I hear from creatives all the time who are like, on the one hand, it's like, oh, I don't make any money. Oh, I can't believe nobody values what I do. I wish I had made more money. I'm so broke. I'm so broke. I'm so broke. Oh, I hate money. I hate sales. I hate marketing. Like, well, then, sweetheart, you have created a perfect system in which you are guaranteed to not get what you say you want.
I'm actually a marketing guy. I am a creative person, but I've never pursued it professionally. My main career has been marketing and advertising, and that is the endless frustration for me with all my creative friends is I'm like, let me market you. I need clients. I need customers. I need experience. I need resume building. Let me market you. They have this delusion that whatever they creative is going to be so transcendent that there's going to be invisible rays that go through the walls of their studio out into the universe, and the audience is going to come and knock on their front door. Like what is the line I heard the other day? Or not advertising is like winking at a girl in the dark. You know what you're doing, but nobody else does. Like if you don't market and promote your music or your artwork, nobody will ever know what you did. And time again, like the artists, they're kind of anti-materialist, or they're anti-capitalist, or they don't like the mercenary consumer aspect of marketing their work, and so they won't market it, and that guarantees that they won't succeed.
First of all, if you really don't want to engage in marketing and sales, that's fine. Then you have what's called a hobby. And a hobby is a beautiful, soul-expanding, elegant, wonderful thing in the world. I have hobbies. I have things that I would never want to put out into the marketplace, right? I do them for me. I do them because they bring me joy. I do them to make presents. I do them for fun. Like, that's great. Then call it, then honor that as your creative expression and as your hobby, and don't put the pressure on it of sales and marketing. If, on the other hand, you know that what you are up to is your message to the world, it is part of why you are here, it is part of your destiny unfolding, then you've got to let people know about it. And, when I started my business full time in 2009, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about entrepreneurship. I didn't know anything about email. I knew nothing about nothing. But I unleashed my inner marketing nerd. Like, I fell in love with business. I fell in love with sales. I fell in love with marketing. And for the exact same reason that I loved acting. Because it's all about story. It's all about language. It's all about human behavior. Why do people do what they do? Why do they love to watch those people unwrap those toys? What is so compelling about that? That's fascinating to me. Why do people say they'll do something and then they don't? Why do they say they would never do something and then they do? They make all this, nobody has $500 and then all of a sudden an iPhone gets released and everybody's got $500. Where did the $500 come from? This mesmerizes me. And I think it's such a fascinating puzzle for the creative person to try and figure out, like, what is it about my work that speaks to people? And how do I communicate that in the easiest, most elegant, most truthful and authentic way possible?
I started out, my first idea of what I wanted to be when I grew up was I wanted to be a visual artist. And then I got into graphic design because I thought that was a little bit more practical. And I moved a little bit further along. And once you've done graphic design and layout and stuff like that, you start to get into more broad, just marketing and advertising stuff. And really, it all these days is all underneath the heading of kind of new media. And to me, like, whether it's, when I look at the podcast and how we produce it, we have writing and editing and music production and video and all those created, like, it really is kind of art in its own way. And it's doing it with a purpose where you from the beginning had a concept of an objective you were trying to achieve with this piece of media. And you look at like something like the magazine and the website and the podcast, it's this big, huge, continuous, constantly building and changing and evolving piece of artwork. And the internet is the canvas, and you're painting this narrative that stretches out, from the beginning of the founding of the magazine in 1979 all the way through today with what it is today. And to me, that's, every bit as creative as like drawing a picture is. It's in a million different dimensions, you're creating in just the same way. So I don't really think there is anything like not contrary to that artist spirit in doing marketing and advertising. And to me, it's all just kind of the same thing.
I totally agree. People ask me all the time, like, how do you find time for your own creative work? Or how do you find, don't you hate doing the boring stuff? I'm like, there is no boring stuff.
No.
I love all of it. I love doing the bookkeeping. Like, I do it by hand on the legal pad with markers, because if I don't write it down by hand, I don't understand it. I love writing emails. I love all of it. I love strategizing. It all feels like, it turns out having my own business is the single greatest art project of all time. And I wish I'd known that sooner. I really do. You're right. It's tons of fun.
And going back to your book, actually, it's the point you made about delegating things in your book, which I think is another point too. If you really are opposed to doing all those things, and those things are necessary for whatever it is your project is, you hire someone else who's an expert in that field to do it.
Yeah, that's I commonly describe that. I call it the MacBook delusion. So everybody and their uncle has a MacBook now, and at the point when they started getting popular as this kind of like status symbol for the creative or the self-anointed creative type, that the first thing you did when you decided to embark on a creative profession is go out and buy a MacBook. And with that MacBook, you can produce music, you can do photography, you can make a website, you can edit video, you can do anything with a MacBook. But it's created this class of kind of generalists who do everything badly. And we've really, we used to have, everybody in the creative fields has to know a little bit about everything else, because you have to interface with all those things. But if you're not the best writer and you have a friend who's a really good writer and you're trying to work on a website and you need written content for that website, let the person who's good at writing do the writing. You take the pictures, or you do the web design or whatever. Delegate, build a team of people who are really good at a smaller number of things, and stop trying to, if you're starting out, you might have to be a one-man band to some extent, but like at the point where you can, or if you have people that you can work with when you're trying to get whatever you're trying to get going, like find people who are already better than you are. I can learn how to do web design. I used to know, and now my knowledge in that field's out of date, and I'd have to spend a month, messing around in WordPress to retrain myself on whatever the latest stuff is. But I know a guy who's good at it. So any of my projects, I just have him do it, because why am I going to reinvent the wheel and try and, catch up with him when I can focus on what I'm already good at?
Well, for sure. And I have a severe case of self-sufficiency-itis. I did all my own stuff for way too long. And it really kept my foot on the neck of my business. It really impeded my profitability. It really impeded the number of people I could reach and help, because, there's only so many hours a day, and there's only so much my own two hands can hold. The minute I figured out that I could hire geniuses and overpay them, my world got a lot better, a lot faster. And it feels wonderful to hire people who are so much better at those things that you're not that great at. And again, for people who feel overwhelmed, again, you're kind of doing that to yourself. So take a look at your schedule, take a look at your life, and figure out, what are the things that only you can do? The work that only you can do, because the work that only you can do, you must do. Mm-hmm. The work that anybody else can do, someone else must do.
Yeah, that's their
right?
role. You're stealing their role from them, really.
That's right. So someone else can cook dinner, someone else can scrub the tile grout, someone else can set up the chairs for the recital, someone else can help out at the bake sale. No one else can do your writing. No one else can raise your children. No one else can be present with someone you love when they're hurting. Those are the things that you make time for that are important, because only you can do them. Really, get it off your plate.
As far as economics go, this is a term I learned in econ back in college. Opportunity cost, like put a value on the cost of what you do, and put it can be arbitrary, but put a dollar value on the time that you spend doing anything. And if the cost to hire somebody else to do that task, especially if it's something that you don't specialize in, is lower than the value of your time doing something else, then hire somebody else to do it. So if you can get your copy proofread for $10 an hour by an English grad student and your time's worth $50 an hour, hire somebody else to do your proofreading for you, because it's not worth your time, to be doing the menial things you can sub out. If, your time isn't free, even if you're not being paid for it, like that time has a value that should be spent on what you're best at. Before we let you go, is there any projects that are going on? Right Where You Are is your current book.
Yep, that's the latest book. So probably your best bet is to go to startrightwhereyouare.com. startrightwhereyouare.com. And there's a bunch of free resources there. And you can also get the Procrastination Domination Starter Kit, which is one of my favorite things to sell and to give away. So you can hop on there, and then that'll put you on my email list, which is kind of where everything happens. So you can write me back and tell me about your projects, and we'll be pen pals and best friends. It'll be great.
Oh, cool. So startrightwhereyouare.com and the Organized Artists Company. Thank you very much for Sam coming on and speaking with us today. And everyone, get your phone out of your bedroom, right?
Right.
I'm looking at Spencer
exactly.
when I say that.
Stop sleeping. Please stop sleeping with your Fitbit on.
Right. No, so you guys make a pact, both of you. Phone, watch, all of it. Out of the bedroom. Give yourself back the moment of being together when you wake up. Yeah.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, you guys. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Conscious Community Podcast. If you'd like more information about sponsoring this podcast or advertising with Conscious Community Magazine, in print or online, please email me at spencer@consciouscommunitymagazine.com. That's SPENCER, or call 630-492-0831.